Yeah, nice to meet you, Aziz. So my name is Ben Lega, and like Cassandra said, I'm the founder and creative director at Studio Tolima. And so we are working on our first commercial project, which is called Koira, so in partnership with Dontnod.
So tell me about Koira. What is this game about?
Yeah, so Koira, it's a poetic narrative adventure game. So you play as this forest spirit, you wake up in a snowy forest and you meet a little puppy, and together they set out to reach the house of the spirit. Along the way, they play together, they overcome obstacles, they help other woodland creatures. But if the forest is a magical place, it's also filled with dangers, and there are some hunters who are tracking them and seem to have a particular interest in the puppy. So this is kind of globally the narrative pitch of the game. And so it's a narrative game without any text, which is kind of unique. And so we really give all the emotional intent and the narrative beats through the animation, the music, which allows to have a very minimalistic experience and a very unique way of doing narrative design and gameplay.
So what inspired the main aspect of the narrative? This idea of a lost spirit in the forest coming across a lost puppy and, joining together to find their way home.
The project started really with the inspiration of what the game would actually look like. And so from the get-go, I know I wanted to have something very striking visually, and that would help to stand out because, as you know, and I guess you've been covering them, there's a lot of games coming out. So it was very important for us to have something that would appeal visually and be kind of different from a lot of the games that you can find. And so one of my base postulates was to try to make something that would have a lot of contrast in the imagery, that would have a lot of pop and really attract the eye. And so to do that, at the time, I really loved the idea of making hand-drawn animation, frame by frame. But on previous projects, I had seen that it can be very time-consuming, especially when, you have to do all the line art and different coloring. So I was exploring first just graphically with these flat shaded characters, just one color. And so I had this main character that was this black silhouette. I thought, okay, I want to have something that has a lot of contrast. So naturally, I put him just on a white background. So it was very iconic. It stood out very well. And it's just that it didn't really fit because there was nothing, right? There was no background. So I just erased the bottom of its feet. And suddenly the character got kind of grounded in the area. And it felt like actually he was in a physical place. He was kind of in a big snowy field. So very quickly, I just played with that. I added some watercolor texture to refine the snow. I placed some trees and some bushes with some light ink and watercolor effects. And directly like a mood was set. Like the character was there lonely in these big snowy fields that looked completely desolate. And so naturally it felt like it was missing like a ray of warmth, something to kind of counterbalance that. And so the first thing that I added was this little puppy that follows him around and that's very cute and jumping in all directions. Naturally, like kind of the story and the project evolved from that. There was the whole tension of there is this beautiful friendship, there is this mysterious character and this cute dog, and you can just throw a stick, play fetch with him, walk around in this forest that looked very dangerous and very mysterious. And so kind of the base of the project was there from just the graphical research of, okay, we like this kind of very mysterious approach and this kind of dual in the thematic of both something very wholesome and also something that's a bit more dangerous and mysterious.
There's something about that silhouetted character art style and this idea of a dialogue-less story that just gels perfectly well together. When did you have that kind of eureka moment where you realized that this combination would be perfect for this particular game?
Very quickly, like when we were able to have the characters kind of move around, then we were debating about, okay, what will the gameplay look like? How will the story come from? And very early on in the project, at the time I was doing everything by myself. The lead composer, so Reginald Noe, joined the project and he started to make some composition, and they have a very strong feeling of minimalism and melancholy. And directly just in this kind of walking simulator where we placed some music on top, and already there was a lot of emotion that was coming from it. Like there was no puzzles, there was no story beats, but there was a very strong mood. And already while playtesting, we could see that people were feeling something. And then, like you said, it's all about conveying these emotions in this kind of minimalistic way. And something that worked really well is that we added these big eyes on the characters that allow to have a very strong insight on their emotion and what they think, which allows to really remove a lot of the noise around the emotion and really fully focus on what they are trying to express with as little word as possible. In a lot of games, you would actually find, for example, this kind of aesthetic back with this silhouette kind of characters, and especially a lot in indie games, because it has, like I mentioned, a lot of of gains in terms of, for example, animation, etc. But often what they will do is that they will keep the full silhouette of the character. So it gives a very mysterious aspect to the avatar. We don't really know what he's thinking or what he's feeling. It's all about in the gesture, in the position. So if you think about, for example, like Limbo or Inside, it's all about the character. We don't really know exactly what is his intent. And so this kind of mix of a very minimalistic approach, but a very big focus on the eye as a focal point for emotion, directly allowed us to know that we could convey a lot through that. And one of the way that helps is that these characters, they are animated in kind of a procedural way. So for example, the heads, the hands, the eyes, they are all animated separately. So from the start, we could have them even walk in a scene, and they could walk in front of us and then walk at each other and then look back at something. And so even, for example, to have them walk through a landscape with the music, you would, for example, have a tree with a berry, and as you would walk, the dog would start to look at the berry and would start to stop. Then the character that was looking ahead would suddenly stop and start looking at the dog. And just with these eye contacts and where they were looking at or where they were not looking at, we could already tell a whole little story. And so this is where we really knew that would be able to, with such tools, tell a very strong and emotionally striking story.
What are the challenges in telling a story like this without using spoken dialogue?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of advantages just in terms of production. There's no dialogue to write. We can leave some aspect of the story more mysterious, but there's a lot of challenges that come into the clarity of what we're trying to convey. So typically, if you played similar games that don't have any text, I'm thinking games, like Journey or Greece, they would really focus on a story that's more evocative. It's all about the emotional journey, but there's no clear story beat about what's happening, why it's happening. It's more about kind of the personal, emotional journey that you live and you can kind of interpret as a player. But from the get-go, our intent was to have kind of a clear story arc, to try to have that same cinematographic and personal approach that the player can have into the interpretation of the game. But at the same time, to clearly go from one story beat to the other. And to do that without dialogues meant that if we didn't want to have like a lot of cutscenes and animation, we needed to have a very clear intent in what the player would understand and how they would understand it. And what's complex is that when you write something on like a piece of text and you make sure the player can read it, it's very clear. While, for example, without text, it's always kind of the player have to be very attentive to it. So the key was doing a lot of playtesting, because for us as designers, there's a lot of things where we think, oh yeah, for sure people will understand this, or for sure they will see this visual clue. And sure enough, when we playtested, often they would miss it, or it's the classical, like people are playing, and the moment the cutscene starts, they kind of start to look away, or they say, okay, now it's not going to be that key. And because for us it was really the most important moment to convey this story element and gameplay element, we needed to make sure that they are repeated, that they are very clear, very simple, and also that in the kind of the way we tell the story, to make sure that we had things that wouldn't be too obscure or hard to understand. So we were working a lot with these more archetype symbols of the friendship, the hunter, the house. So these are kind of clear goals. For example, when you see a house in the distance, there's kind of something universal and natural where okay, like this is where I have to go, this is the objective. While if it was some other narrative goal, it would have been more mysterious. So we tried to work a lot with these kind of things that would be as universal as possible and as easy to interpret as possible for the players.
There are so many of these puzzles that involve interacting with the dog, so I kind of have to ask, do you or anybody else on the team have dogs of your own, and did you spend some time with them, play with them to kind of try and come up with some ideas, try and brainstorm?
Yeah, so actually, personally, I never owned a dog on my own, and I think nobody on the team ever had one, which is kind of funny. But the thing is that the character of the dog is kind of more than a dog. It's more about the story and the relationship that is behind it. So it's more of a metaphorical tale. But we wanted to make sure that the dog would feel as grounded in reality as possible. So what we did is that we have a lot of friends. We are in a big co-working in Brussels. We're also making games, and so some of these people have dogs, so we spend a lot of time, going to the park with them and playing with the dogs and seeing the kind of behaviors of how they would react. You throw a stick to the dog, and sometimes he will bring it back, but he wouldn't like give it to you. He would so you have to kind of fight against the dog to get the stick back. Or when the dog is really happy, he would be kind of zooming around. He's kind of going in all direction and just running around you. So these are kind of behaviors that's really, when we would notice that they would put a smile on our face or that we would kind of react strongly to these moments, we knew that these would be interesting emotional moments to put in. So we didn't focus too much on creating something that would be super realistic, because it still has this kind of children book cartoon vibe in the game, but all the small things that we knew would kind of trigger people emotionally, we try to put them back there.
And last question from me, you have a demo on the way later this summer. What can players expect to see from it?
Yeah, so later in the summer, we're going to have public demo of the game. So there's going to be all the key elements that you can find in the final game that you want to kind of be able to showcase in the demo. So obviously it will be a shorter version, right, where you are only seeing a portion of the game, but it will allow you to see the main aspect of friendship, of danger in the forest, but also the aspect more around the mysterious and magical aspect of the forest, so that you have a different sample of the different type of gameplay and interactions you can have in the forest. So yeah, we are super excited to be able to show this demo and to see what players think when they are playing it.
All right, Ben, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing Koira in 2025. And what platforms will it be coming to?
So it's coming on PC. And for now, that's everything that's announced. And we are still discussing and weighing all the options, but on PC for sure.
All right, for more interviews like this, keep it here on Shacknews.